So here we are, and we can ask ourselves, what is going to be the future? What are our ideas about how we can make our future more sustainable? And we can look at this from an economic kind of viewpoint, kind of standpoint, and we can look at the efficiency of the things that we're producing, and then also the scale of our production, like how many things we are producing. So a good example of this would be the fuel efficiency of a car, right? So over time, we would like to see the cars becoming more fuel efficient. However, we also have to take into consideration that that might not be the whole story. So if everybody is driving more fuel efficient cars, but we are driving more cars, then that would kind of balance each other out, the efficiency and the scale. So we can define efficiency as the ability of something to reduce the or lessen the effect on the environment, right? So this lessening of the environmental impact of a good or service. Because that's what economics is. It's the trading of goods and services. So we could also talk about the scale of that, and that is the amount or quantity of economic activity. Or quantity. And sometimes this is referred to as the GDP, or the gross domestic product. So how much goods and services are being produced in a given area. However, it's important to note that when we talk about economics, generally we say that increase in GDP increases everybody's well-being, right? So if we're going to look at society, there's this idea that you have to ever increase your scale. Otherwise, if you have a drop in your gross domestic product, that generally is a really bad sign. And so we have to take into consideration that economics is really oftentimes thinks that growth is always better. But from an environmental and a sustainable point of view, growth is not always better. So there is an example in your book about energy efficiency and refrigerators. So if we look the blue, that is the use of the energy. And you'll notice that something happened in like the early 70s and things started to become more energy efficient, in this case, refrigerators. But you'll also notice that the size of the refrigerator actually increased as well. So, and then what's not on this graph is like, how many refrigerators did we produce, which would have been the scale. So we increased the efficiency. So by using less energy, that is wonderful. But we've also increased the size of the refrigerator, which means that it actually takes more energy to produce that refrigerator. And then how many refrigerators are we producing? So those are some things to really pay attention to in terms of economics. So for example, it would be better to buy a small, efficient vehicle, if possible, than to buy a larger, efficient vehicle, right? So the small is less environmental degradation than a larger vehicle. And specifically, I guess, you could also look at, well, like, if in the larger vehicle, could I hold more people? Or do I have to have two small vehicles to compensate and drive, right? So like, say, for example, you had a large family, but if you have to drive two vehicles everywhere to transport that large family, then that is another issue. Okay, so let's look at what is referred to as the Plimsoll line. So this is just kind of an analogy to what, like looking at the planet as a ship. And is it going to sink? Are we going to have catastrophic degradation that causes mass extinction event that causes the whole planetary system to collapse. Okay, so here the Plimsoll line is this line right, it's kind of hard to see, but I'll draw it on here. This looks like right here. This is my, oops, no, that's not it. This is my Plimsoll line right here. There we go. And the idea is as long as that stays above the water, then the ship is not going to sink. So if you put your cargo in the wrong places, it could cause the Plimsoll line right here and right here to dip below the waves, and that is going to cause your ship to sink. However, if you put them in, distribute them evenly, right, then we have less likelihood, right? It's not going to sink. However, if we put more on that ship, even if there's an equal distribution of the weight, that Plimsoll line is now below the waves. So there's my line and there's the waves. And so that ship is going to sink. And so this is the idea that our planet does have a carrying capacity, and we don't really quite understand what that carrying capacity is. It's very hard to estimate it. And it includes not only the number of individuals, but it also includes all of their activity, their economic activity. So if you have a high standard of living and you need a big house and lots of cars, but you have a small family, right? So that's different than having a small house, no cars, and a large family, but they both have impacts on our ability to have a sustainable future. So this idea is useful in considering what it is that we can do to help to create a sustainable future.